Welcome to the Hearts Entwined podcast. In this podcast, we'll be having discussions around the secrets which attract lasting, healthy, fulfilling relationships, creating a healthy mindset, and what women should know and understand about men. Introducing your host, Lynn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, relationship expert, trainer, speaker, and best-selling author of the Cupid's Bow technique. Lynn's mission is to have a positive impact in reducing divorce, domestic violence, and suicide.
Welcome to the Hearts Entwined podcast. This is your host, Lynn Smith, the Queen of Hearts. And today, listeners, we've got a fabulous guest. Her name is Sara Sanchez-Copley. So welcome, Sara.
Hello, so nice to be here.
It's really good to meet you as well, Sara. Now, Sara is a mental health and wellbeing consultant. And I just thought it'd be great to have somebody like Sara on the podcast today because she's very skilled in the art of meditation and specifically around the well-being and health side of relationships. And what we thought we'd discuss today is the unrealistic expectations in relationships. So Sara, what's been your either personal experience of this or experiences regards what clients bring to you around this subject?
Hi. Yeah, I think there's been several different things. I mean, for me personally, I suppose everybody has unrealistic expectations. I'm 45 and I've been with my husband since I was 21. So I think, we've had kids and jobs and lives and moved continents and, we've weathered all kinds of storms and problems. And I think what we've learned is that keep expectations low. I think
yes.
If don't expect of somebody else what you can't provide yourself. So I think that's a really interesting take to have on it. And professionally, I mean, especially at the moment, maybe mentioning, the fact that COVID-19 has left us, most of the world, sort of at home with spouses. Maybe we don't know as well as we think we know. And we may have been asking ourselves for time together for a long time. We're so busy. Oh, if we weren't so busy, we could enjoy this meal together or this movie or this walk in the park. And now kind of that we are together, the expectation is that we're going to be like absolutely thrilled and happy with each other all the time and meeting each other's needs. And, I think that what I've heard is just that that's not in most cases what's actually happening at the moment.
Yeah, the reality is really quite different to the fantasy or the expectations in our head, isn't it?
Well, it is, because most of the time, and I'm in England, but my clients are all over the world. It's most of the time two people are working. And you kind of have your roles that are set. We bring roles into a relationship. So we sort of, whatever our parents were, whether we had one parent or two parents or grandparents or whoever raised us, we kind of have these roles built into us, what we think works, what we think is a good relationship and a good marriage. And then we kind of develop over our teenage years. We start having relationships. We start finding boundaries, what we like, what we don't like. And then into our 20s and 30s, sometimes we get into more longer term relationships and marriages. And I think, what we're finding is that throughout the world, the divorce rate is almost, England's about 43%, Portugal 67%, Spain's 50 plus, America's 50 plus % of long-term relationships and marriages that are ending in divorce. And one of the major things people are saying is, unmet needs, frustration, you don't know each other, lack of connectivity, and lack of romance. So I think all of those things come into play, particularly right now when we're thinking about what are best practices for relationships during lockdown. We should ideally, as partners in relationships, be the best mate, if you like, be your best helper in these situations. But what we're finding is that two very stressed out people, so you can have problems with health, you're worried you're going to be ill, your economy, your job, your children. So you now have your children on top of your full-time job. You have your children all day, meals, cooking, cleaning, being stuck in the house, and you're realizing that you're actually quite annoyed most of the time and irritated, and your natural routine has been thrown off. So I think, when those buffers of work and other activities are taken away and you are just with your spouse or partner, what happens to a romantic relationship in that situation is that it fizzles. It fizzles, and we get afraid, I suppose.
I agree. It's very sad, really, that I suppose some degree there will be maybe a minority that are thriving during this period of lockdown, and we'll probably be seeing lots of babies in 9 months' time. Because
that's true. I looked before I came on, and funnily enough, they usually do these statistics sort of around Christmas or January, and it's the time when divorce rates always spike after Christmas. But what they have found is that what they are predicting is definitely there's been a fertility spike during this. And for some, new relationships, there's been a lot of new relationships that have popped up during lockdown. But the ones, like, of course, it makes sense. The marriages, the relationships that were kind of in a bit of trouble before lockdown, in general, it hasn't helped.
No, I think it gets amplified, doesn't it? I think if you've got, something that's not working in the relationship, it gets magnified more so, doesn't it? In times of even greater stress, such as being in a situation, like you said, where we're locked down now for 24 hours in each other's care, and maybe have, like you say, this idealistic notion that maybe, it will be for our good and greater, better selves and our relationships, but quite often the opposite happens.
It is, yeah, quite often the opposite happens too, when, speaking about expectations in relationships. Oftentimes, the expectation when you get married, I suppose, is, within reason, most of us understand that there's a honeymoon period. Statistically, married people are happier than unmarried, or people that are not in supportive long-term relationships. But then people with young children under 5 are unhappier even though they're married. So the statistics that play along with these things vary for socioeconomic groups and cultural groups and all kinds of things, but I just mean as a general picture. I suppose the interesting thing is having the right kind of expectations, because what evidence has actually shown us is that in the absence of expectations, we're not even trying. So if we're not expected to show up, be nice, be supportive, come home from work, or come home, meet each other somewhere, these sort of expectations, these boundaries that are set in relationships, if they're not set, we do tend to absolutely settle for just whatever happens in the day, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But the opposite of setting kind of the right kind, for lack of a better word, of expectations is we set, absolutely unrealistic ones. Like this holiday we wait for. So, you wait for 2 weeks to go to Mallorca, and you're absolutely going to be completely relaxed. You're going to sleep well. You're going to eat better. You're going to exercise. You're going to, have much more, time to be intimate with your partner. And you talk about all these things you haven't talked about. And what we find is that just doesn't happen. You tend to go on holiday, and I have many more clients reporting cases of panic attacks on holiday, stress, they sleep worse, they find that they have much more sort of physical symptoms, stomach aches, headaches, and then they have the pressure of, it's not working out, the holiday isn't what I expected, and I've waited for this all year. So I think you can kind of make this parallel with a marriage, it's like, you're going to get married and everything's going to be perfect. He's going to, or she is going to make you happy. He's going to make all these sort of insecurities you had and these feelings of low self-worth and everything. You're going to be married to this wonderful person, and those feelings are going to disappear. That's just not what happens. You tend to have a year or 18 months plateau where things kind of become great, and then they plateau at 18 months, and the issues and problems you had before you were married, regardless of whether they are the perfect partner for you or not, the problems that you carry sort of within you with the relationship with yourself is still there. And as far as holidays go, there is so much pressure on the holiday, like you can put on a marriage, for things to be, well, we have these kids and we have this house and we have these jobs. Why am I not happy?
Mm.
Because the pressure is to be happy as opposed to just be present. If you like that analogy, if it's not too sort of off the wall. But on holiday, my very recently client said to me, I'm in the most beautiful part of the world. I've paid like $6,000 to be here, and we've had to move hell and high water to get here. And she's like, I literally have had one panic attack after the other and haven't slept. And the explanation would be, well, your body has now released some tension. So your shoulders have dropped, your jaw has loosened, your stomach has loosened, and you're getting this flood of emotion, because your body will keep a record of everything that goes on in your mind.
Mm.
So I said to her, if you can just ride this wave and be nice to yourself and explain to your partner that, don't blame him. Well, if I had to do all the packing and I had to do all the shopping to get here, and it was so difficult, and you forgot your mask. If you can avoid that and just be with what's present in the moment of being there, which is panic, and maybe understanding how your brain works about these things, you can have a realistic expectation of, okay, so we have 2 weeks, maybe the first 2 or 3 days, we're going to be just sort of decompressing. But without kind of the knowledge and the acceptance of that, the realistic expectation of this holiday, it can absolutely turn into a catastrophe or a divorce. if you can understand.
Yeah, definitely. I feel that quite often, don't we sometimes when we have a break or a holiday or a weekend coming up, we can often, put ourselves under great deal of stress beforehand, and all that stress has to come out at some point, and it usually comes out at the point where we do have that moment where we can relax and let things go. And it wouldn't, it will be probably at a time when you've got that holiday and that weekend off, and
it's almost like your body knows. Your body knows this is a space where it can happen. What we tend to have happen in those situations is we're not taught. We don't teach our children, or we're not taught to be with things that are uncomfortable. So being panicky or being anxious or being angry, we're taught that you need to get past it or push it away as fast as possible. So if you're on holiday, you have a fight, or one of you goes off for a walk, or one of you goes to the pub and stays there for 4 hours, or whatever it is. But all of these things are just sort of prolonging the inevitable. So a lot of what I do with people is building a relationship with themselves, so they sort of they understand themselves. What I say to people, and what was said to me years ago when I was doing my master's was, and I was very interested, and I was living in Asia at the time, and I was very interested in this kind of meditative experience and what it could bring to my life and my clients' lives. And but I was skeptical. I call myself the reluctant meditator. And he said to me, he said to me, right, imagine, everything going well and you pass away in your 80s. He said, imagine going on, somebody says to you, you're going on a trip. There's going to be hardships, suffering, difficulties. There's going to be happiness, there's going to be joy, there's going to be all these things in this journey you're taking with this person. But you need to know how they struggle, how they achieve, what their values are, what they bring to the party, if you like what are their strengths, what can you be guaranteed when there's a problem, this person can show up and do X, Y, and Z. Or how do you need to best support this person to be their most authentic, their most happy self. And you would want to know all those things if you were going to go through a journey with somebody until your last day. Yes. But most of us don't know almost we know very, very little about our authentic inner environment. What are our habits? What are our patterns? What actually makes us happy? What actually, is it what we were told makes us happy? Is it that you study, you get a good job, you buy a nice house, you meet a nice person, you have 2 nice kids, and you have a good pension plan? For most
Yeah.
people, of course, they're all very important things. All of those, having somebody to share your life with, if you want children, having that, being able to look after yourselves, but even money, research has absolutely shown that as soon as you reach a certain amount, I think in dollars it works out at about $70,000 a year, you're on a universal sort of happiness index. Your happiness does not go up any higher. So past 70,000, so that if you have a nice house, you can afford healthcare, you can afford a holiday, you have a nice car, you can buy yourself nice things, look after your family. You're not a millionaire by any means, but you're absolutely meeting above your hierarchy of needs, your basic needs. You're not going to be much happier if you make 120,000. Or 140,000. You're just going to buy more stuff, and stuff, as we all know, doesn't actually make you happy.
No, it just brings with it its own different challenges, doesn't it?
Well, you just need more stuff. Like I had the Mercedes, that was really nice, but now I have a new one, so I better go for that next job because then I get that one. But you're actually no happier. When you go to bed at night and lie in bed, you're not thinking, what makes us happier is one of the major things, and one of the major mental health problems we're having is that what makes us happy is social connection. What makes us happy is hanging out with people, having a coffee, it's why in some countries where they have a different climate, say, than sort of the England, Ireland, sort of Scandinavian part of the world, is that there is much more of like a cafe culture. You leave your house, you go down, you have a coffee, you go back home, you do some work or go to the office, but in the afternoon you meet a couple of other people and have a chat. It is these social connections, and Instagram doesn't count. Facebook doesn't count. It's, actually looking at somebody in their face, reading their body language, having an actual physical social interaction is what we're all really missing. So when we're missing all of those things, we then come home to the partner and all of our eggs are in that basket. This person I come home to, or come homes to me, better be my best friend, my tennis partner, my financial advisor, my counselor, and it's just unrealistic.
Yeah, I think especially, we tend to think as well, both sexes are very different. Generally men think, behave, and, react very different to women. And, it's embracing those differences and knowing that your man isn't going to necessarily react or interact with you the same as probably a girlfriend would, in a social situation that you might be wanting to engage him in. So, don't, like you say, put all your eggs in his basket and make him responsible for your only connection that you're having with another human being.
Yeah, it's also about, I think what makes people happy is what makes people happy, regardless of whether they're sort of men or women. The happiness index, as we talk about, is we do look at men and women, but overall we just look at people. So yes. I think what makes people happiest are sort of what we found is being grateful, having something they like to do, social connections, feeling valued, feeling cared for, feeling understood. And both men and women need all those things. We tend to do it differently, and that's probably just because of family roles or cultures, or just because that's how it's been for so long. But I think it is a really interesting thing to sort of, if you can start to notice in your relationship, maybe that you are, sometimes for what I say to people is, what, as a couple, what is your biggest strength? So instead of saying to people, right, this are all the areas you're not good at, because if you're already not feeling good around each other and in your relationship, sort of going to see somebody and have them be like, yeah, those, I'd add a few more on, is just not helpful. So
No.
I tend to try to identify with people sort of as an individual, and then as a couple, kind of what are their strengths and how can they go forward that way. Because being very critical of each other when you're already feeling kind of under fire, I mean, it just does no good. One of the big things I've talked to 2 or 3 people about this week was, she said to me, well, he comes home from work and, my stomach's in a knot because I know it's going to be just an argument. It's going to be like, well, did you do this? Because you said you do this and I said I'd do that. And where, I've done mine. Why didn't you do yours? And all these kind of backwards and forwards battle. But what I explain to people is that the stomach ache you're having is an automatic reaction you feel to threat.
Yes.
It's your fight, flight, freeze response. Your stomach's tightening. You're priming for an argument. You're priming for this. So it's no wonder that this relationship, the intimacy is gone, because you can't be intimate with somebody you're threatened by. You can't be, vulnerable, which we all have to be in relationships, and courageous and honest and show compassion when you feel threatened by somebody.
Very true.
So it may not even be that you see it as threat. So oftentimes when I say that, I say, well, this is a threatening. Your body is reacting this way. She will be defensive. No, he's my husband. He would never hurt me. And I'm saying, no, I'm not saying that he's doing anything physical to you. I said, but your personal reaction to him is one of threat. So he's then devastated, thinking, God, I really didn't want my wife to feel like this. But you're just starting to open a conversation of how do you best communicate? Because what is happening, really, really, really isn't working. And getting to grips, I suppose, with having uncomfortable conversations. We don't want to hurt each other. You don't want to make a situation worse. We already aren't getting along and he sleeps on the sofa 3 nights a week. And now I'm going to say, yeah, well, when I see you, I get a stomach ache. It's very difficult. But there's no doubt about it that this situation of lockdown has exacerbated all of those things. But it's also forced some people into having uncomfortable conversations that they've come out the other side of.
And quite often, we build up, don't we, in our heads, these uncomfortable conversations to probably be more of a threat to us than what they actually end up being. If we do catch each other at a time where we can say, look, let's have a conversation about, how we can improve our relationship or whatever. And if you're not ready for that now, let's make a time for when you are ready for it and approach it that way. Quite often, if you ease yourself into some, a conversation like that, all the horrible scenarios that you built in your mind as to how it's going to play out usually don't materialize, do they?
No, they usually don't. Or the things become very clear, and some relationships aren't supposed to last forever.
Yes.
That's also true. But I think, there is just this idea of, because it's scary to be, especially when you've been with somebody, years and years and years, and you turn around and say, well, I've got some clients I work with who say, well, our children have now left home and I feel very lost. I don't know who I am as the mom. He is still sort of maybe busy in work. I'm now going back to work, or I'm going from part-time work to full-time work, or you've both been in full-time work and now your lives are just the children connected you. So you would come home because the kids were home, and what are the kids doing, and when are they coming home, and what do they need? But now the kids are no longer there. You're both coming back and you're like roommates in this house. So I think, communication and realistic expectations are, and you are going to change. If you're going to be with somebody for years and years and years and years, changing is inevitable. So maybe, not being curious, I suppose, about your partner and their personality and their changes and where you fit in is there maybe a better way to look at things, and mindfulness does a lot of that. It does a lot of just being curious, kind of watching and then deciding. So instead of, being judgmental and saying, oh my God, so great, now you're going to become a tennis pro and buy all this stuff. You're taking it on as, well, it's to get away from me, or why does he want to get fit all of a sudden, or whatever it is, or she's whatever joined, you know, kickboxing, whatever it is, you know, having a curiosity about this person. You know, nobody likes to be judged. We judge ourselves incessantly in our own heads, but we also judge our relationships extremely harshly. And I think, especially at the moment, err on the side of being a bit kinder, you know, about yourself and your relationship. It's very difficult at the moment. You know, a lot of people are furloughed, a lot of people have lost their jobs. How are they going to pay the mortgage? How's, you know, kids don't know if they've got places in universities, and when are they taking exams? I mean, sort of take a broader perspective a little bit, I think is very helpful with expectations. You know, we do this thing with relationships where we look at Instagram, we look at movies, and we look at, you know, it's like, oh, they've weathered all these storms, and, you know, they've still managed to make $1 million a year, and, you know, have this gorgeous family, and everybody's beautiful, and they eat dinner together every night, and they have dinner together on Sunday and movie night. And it's like, yeah, life's messy. And anybody who tries to tell you that it isn't is not telling the truth.
Yeah, you know, I've been through, you know, many different types of relationships. I was in a 23-year marriage, which was happy, but for some reason I didn't feel quite 100% fulfilled in that, because I knew, like, you know, you were talking about the flight or fight or freeze reaction to things. I knew I was, you know, from a previous awful traumatic experience that I had before I met my husband, was still protecting my heart, if you like, in that relationship, and didn't realize I was hanging on to that, and you know, protecting my heart, and therefore, because my heart wasn't open to him, I wasn't feeling his heart open to me, and therefore I was contributing to that feeling of not feeling unfulfilled, or fulfilled, I should say, in that relationship.
I know.
So, you know, unfortunately, because I didn't have the awareness when I was in that relationship to change things, I ended it, because I just felt like, you know, this isn't what I want for the rest of my life, to feel like this.
I think it is. I think it's, you know, awareness is a bit of a buzzword at the moment, isn't it? But it is just that. It's being sort of aware of yourself in a relationship, aware of what you're bringing to the relationship, aware what you're not getting from the relationship. And oftentimes you want to pretend that everything's fine, or it'll work itself out, or he'll figure it out, or she'll figure it out. And I think what we don't sort of maybe show younger people in you know, beginning relationships is that you really have to talk to each other. You really have to be honest. You really have to be, you know, it's not about being nice all the time. It's about, this isn't working. How can we figure this out? How can we make this better? Because you do find, I think, too, that you have this sort of oneness. People are like, well, now we're one unit, we're married, I think that's, I mean, personally for me, it doesn't work in a relationship. I very much am me, and he is very much him.
Yes.
We have our own friends, we have our own hobbies, our own lives, still have kids, we still have all these kind of things. You know, take a holiday a year by yourself with your friends, or, you know, I don't have to check constantly where he is, or where, if he's, you know, or he doesn't have to check with me. I think it's
healthy,
knowing, it's knowing that it's okay, because so many girls are like, well, where's your boyfriend? I saw the Instagram picture, he was tagged in a picture with somebody. You know, you're building this. And if you start that at kind of, you know, when you first start being interested in having relationships, you know, 12, 13, 14, if that starts then, you know, you're not building this idea that you are just two people. You know, life, I suppose, if you think of it as like a cake, I think a lot of things like cake is like, you know, you have to have built into your own life, you know, something that gives you fulfillment, you know, connection, compassion for things, an interest, a contentment that comes from doing something with your life. And the relationship that you have, then the intimate relationship that you have, should be the icing on the cake. It should be something that is very precious to you, and you look after and you nurture, but it isn't the whole cake. It isn't that if you just have this one person, you are then better, or, you know, you're kind of tick that box, like, yes, I've done that. I think what people do tend to find in sort of long-term relationships is just that. Either that they say, well, I'm still depressed, I'm still unhappy, I still don't feel fulfilled, I've never gone on I've never backpacked around Australia, but you being in this relationship should not have stopped you doing any of those things. If anything, when you're with somebody in a relationship and you know, and you have good communication, you know what they need and you know what makes them happy, you encourage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Encourage.
I 100% agree. You know, and I actually use the cake analogy, funnily enough, myself, you know, and just saying,
Okay.
Your partner should be just, well, I call, rather than the icing, I say he's the cherry on the top of the cake.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, exactly. I just don't like cherries, so I don't say.
So like you say, you know, you have your own fulfilled life that you take responsibility for, and you know what makes you happy, and you have your own hobbies and interests, and he has his, and you know, when you come together, you know, he's the cherry on the already great cake of life that you've created.
I mean, yeah, and you know, being realistic, I suppose, is a big thing. I think instead of realistic, I tend to call it perspective, but having a perspective of your life, you know, a perspective of what's realistic and what's possible. You know, like at the moment, it's unrealistic that my family and I are going on a holiday anywhere in the next, I would say, until Christmas, probably. You know, and so managing what we need in this. So it is, you know, my youngest is out of school now. She's got A levels, and so she's working. The other one is busy doing something else. So it's managing this expectation for me. I think a lot of us have this, you know, well, this is what I want in the summer. This is what a family does in the summer. So we all have to sort of stick to that. And what I find is that you being flexible, having good perspective, having just an ability to sit down. I suppose this is where meditation comes in, is just having a practice every day that kind of slows me down. I feel like I can connect in with what's going on with me for the day. What am I bringing to the day? Is today going to be one of those days where I just need to take it easy and take it as it comes? Or is today one of those days where I'm going to be able to be in flow, if you like, and get through a lot of different things? And meditation really helps me with that. So then when I meet my husband at the end of the day, or my kids, I can meet them. I can be present. I can meet them where they are. So instead of bringing all my baggage for, oh, I popped the tire, I didn't pay that bill, the bathroom's leaking. And then when my son comes in and drops his football boots on the floor and says, I hate this dinner, I didn't want this anyway. You know, not meeting him with, well, how dare you? You don't know what's happened to me today. Just taking a sec to say, yeah, well, you know, that is for dinner, but if you want to make something else, you know, knock yourself out. There's the fridge, you're a big boy. So I think it's you know, it's just not, we tend to go down so many rabbit holes, and we tend to follow so many storylines, you know, especially when we have unrealistic expectations. It's like, well, that's my husband, that's how he is. May not be, but it's the story you created.
So just to finally wrap up, Sarah, you know, for our audience members that aren't familiar with what is meditation and what does meditation look like, and if I wanted to, you know, implement this as a practice in my life, what would be your sort of short, simple explanation for describing that?
I say to everybody, I mean, meditation is checking in with yourself. It's taking a few minutes. It only has to be 5 or 10 minutes of your day. It's just taking time out to stop, to pause, to take a few deep breaths, see what you can feel in your body. You know, for me, it's always my jaw is tense, or I'm lifting my left shoulder, or I'm clenching my toes. Just sort of scan your body, check in with what you're feeling in your body, and then whatever feelings arise. So you may be realizing that you feel very tense and angry and anxious, or whatever is present. So meditation for me is just taking the time to stop, check in with your body, check in with your emotions, and just be able to be with them for a few minutes, give them a little bit of space. Know really where you are, know really what you're feeling and what you need to proceed. So sometimes you can proceed with whatever you were going to do. You were going to go to the shop, you were going to go to work, you were going to go into that next meeting. But I think it is just really, I find the simplest way to describe meditation is learning to be aware of yourself.
Yeah. Just noticing and observing yourself, like you say, and what's happening within your body, where you're feeling certain aches or pains or clenches or feelings.
Yeah, because, before I was told I had, and I've got 2 degrees in psychology, before I was told, this is a panic attack or this is an anxiety attack, I had broken 2 teeth. Anybody else coming to see me, and I would, they're like, well, I have a lot of headaches and I'm very, tense, my back hurts, I've broken 2 teeth. I'd be like, sounds like you're very anxious and stressed. For some reason, I had an ability to completely cut off my brain, my sort of doing. Let's just do this. Let's get through the day, get the kids to school, get to work, get home, get the dinner, get the washing. I had such an ability to do that I forgot how to be in my own body. And the result was, lots of stress, lots of broken teeth, lots of headaches. And I think, if anything, meditation can just tune you back in to how you're feeling and what you need. And it does. It's built a huge resilience in me. It's built a huge, I can take a few minutes before I go into meetings or into things and just really check in on myself, really settle myself down, really slow the speeding thoughts and or rumination about things, and just be in the moment for what's next.
Yeah, I tend to liken it, to the doing is very much in the head. Do this, like you say, a checklist of things that you need to crack on with and action focus, whereas the being is just, stop, stay still, and just, observe.
It's hard though. It does take practice. People say to me, oh yeah, it took me doing it sort of twice a day, close to 6 or 7 months before I was like, I'm starting to benefit from this. Yeah. So I think for people, definitely it's not if you meditate on Friday, on Saturday, you're not stressed.
No, I think it's more of an intuitive heart connection rather than a head connection state of being, though, isn't it?
It's definitely it's definitely it encompasses a lot of things. I mean, meditation is it encompasses so many things, and as you meditate, different things pop up. So
So on that note then, Sarah, if the audience members want to connect with you, what's your best contact address or information?
Yeah, thank you. My website is www.thedailymeditationlab.com, and my email is on there, but my email is sanchez-copley@gmail.com. They're all lowercase letters.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights around the unrealistic expectations that we have in our relationships, and also, describing so well, in good, easy, simple terms, what your experience is of how you can explain about meditation, because I'm sure there's some listeners that have not put this into practice or have heard the benefits of it, or even know what meditation is. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Yeah, meditation is for everybody.
It is. I can vouch for that. Yeah, massively. So it just leaves me to wrap up now to say true love starts with opening our hearts. And until next time, folks, goodbye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Hearts Entwined podcast. You can follow Lynn via the Facebook group Two Hearts Entwined, or search Lynn Smith, inspirational speaker, at LinkedIn, or email lynn@hearts-entwined.com. That's LYN@hearts-entwined.com. Remember, true love starts with opening our hearts.